My name is Sylvia Puente, and I'm the Executive Director of the Latino Policy Forum. We're privileged to work on issues of early education, housing, immigration, and strengthening leadership in the Latino community. And we have about 100 different Latino community organizations that we work with. So while we get to do the policy analysis, it's really informed by the breadth of community leadership, folks like you, that say, here are the issues of concern to us. So I thought I would do just a little bit of context setting for where we're at, and then I've got some questions, and then I'm sure our legislators have some questions. So one of the things that I want to say as I think about the Latino community, and some of you may have heard me speak about this in the past, is we're really at such an interesting time, and I think just to set the context of the time that we're in, and here's Representative Berrios in the House, so thank you for joining us. Let's give her a hand. She'll be up here in a moment. So what tumultuous times. We have a change in administrative leadership at the state level that will be occurring, and we'll be having a little bit of a conversation around what the implications of that are, and I understand that both Governor Quinn and Governor-elect Rauner were here, so let's give them both a hand for being here and being present. And we heard a momentous announcement last night, which is to be continued today in terms of administrative relief on one of the issues that so many of us have been working so hard on. So let's give a round of applause to all our brothers and sisters who aren't going to have to worry about getting deported, and hopefully it will be 2 million, no more. Oh, and Senator Martinez is in the House, so thank you very much for being here. Yeah, we appreciate that. We're just getting started. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of the duality of the Latino community. So as we think about this public policy conference and what does it mean and what does it mean for our community, I've been doing this work for almost probably 30 years, right? It started when I was about 5. But what we see now in the Latino community is the duality, and by that I mean we see two competing trends that appear to conflict each other, but are both occurring and happening at the same time. And I want to give you just examples of that. We've seen an increase in poverty, right? But we've also seen an increase in the number of households that earn over $75,000 a year. So do you get that? Child poverty has increased by 33% over the past decade or so, so that 1 out of every 4 children are growing up in a household of poverty. But at the same time, we've seen a doubling of the number of households that now earned over $75,000 a year. So that duality, increasing poverty, but a greater number of households. 1 in 4 of our households now have income of over $75,000 a year. In education, 40% of our children are still not finishing high school, but at the same time, we've seen a doubling of the number of Latino graduates, right? So do you get that? The duality, both trends, not finishing high school, but because of our population and demographic growth, we've seen a doubling of the number of Latino college graduates. We've also seen in home ownership, for the first time, for decades, we've seen slow but incremental increases in the number of Latino households that are homeowners. We're now at 51% of Latino households in Illinois being homeowners, but for the first time we saw a dip. We got up to 53% before the financial crisis, and now we're at 51%. So this is the first time that we've seen a decline. We know that more than half of our households are rent and burdened and mortgage burdened, which means they're paying more than 30% of their income in housing costs. But at the same time, we're responsible for all of the growth in home ownership in the state. And so by that, what I mean, the number of homeowners in the state grew by 65,000 since 2000, but the number of Latino homeowners in the state grew by over 90,000. Does that make sense? We are driving the housing market because we're all the growth in the housing market. So we have this duality, and I could go on with other indicators, but you see what I'm talking about here? Increasing poverty and increasing wealth happening at the same time. Still not enough high school completion, but increasing numbers of college dropouts. Decreases in home ownership, but we're responsible for all of the state's home ownership growth, and we're responsible for 3/4 of the state's labor market growth. So we are driving the state's economy. I see Representative Hernandez taking notes. This is all available in this little publication that we have here that's on our website, so you can go to latinopolicyforum.org. So one of the things as we think about this transition time we're in as a community and where we're headed is how do we continue to understand that while we still have challenges in our community, we are driving the state's economy with labor market growth and home ownership growth and more households, 1 in 4 now, that are entering the middle class, right? How do we continue to capitalize on that so we continue to grow and advance as a Latino community? In state government, and I have to give thanks to Senator Sandoval. This publication is now 5 years old, The Blueprint for Latino Investment, a Latino Legislative Agenda, which we wrote when Senator Sandoval was co-chair of the Latino Caucus. And some of the trends and issues that we laid out here are still very relevant to this time that we're in, especially as we transition to a new governor. So I just wanted to point out 2 of the indicators where we've made some progress, but we still have a very, very long way to go with respect to how well is the state of Illinois meeting the needs of the Latino community. I think we all know that it's important to have a workforce that reflects the diversity of the state's workforce, primarily because you need to be able to provide services. We need that Latino workforce because we want people to be able to provide services in Spanish, but we also need people in key leadership roles and at the decision-making table so that as decisions are being made, especially in this time of fiscal challenge, that our community does not get shortchanged. So the not so good news here still is that while Latinos are 16% of the workforce in Illinois, of the whole state, but we're still less than 5% of Illinois government's workforce, less than 5%. So there's a huge disparity there. Another indicator that we've looked at, the Latino Policy Forum and the Latino Agenda, which we helped to convene, is how much goes, we've tracked and monitored, how much goes in state grants to the community organizations that provide services to our children and families. All of you that work for different community organizations, and I could go on and name them. What we have found is that in fiscal year 13, there was nearly $65 million that went from the Department of Human Services, the Department of Economic Development, to organizations that provide those critical services to our children and families. But this is only 8% of all the grants that the state allocates to nonprofit organizations. And again, we're 17% of the population, but only 8% of the grants, $65 million, is going into the organizations that really provide the critical services. These resources are, of course, critical to address poverty, to improve education, to improve home ownership, and to improve wealth. So there's more that I could say, but just a little bit of context for, I think, where some of both the opportunities that face us as a community, and that, as I mentioned, we're driving the labor market and the home ownership in the state, but also some of the challenges that face us. So, Representative Crespo has joined us, and thank you, Representative Crespo, and who else is Senator Martinez, and who else didn't I see?
Oh, you got us all.
And Representative Bedillo. So let's give them all another hand for joining us. Thank you very much. Congratulations again to all of you that were recently reelected. I know some of you had some real challenges in terms of reelection, so we're glad that you're here. So this is just going to be sort of open, and I didn't really get to, whatever you have to say. So I think sort of probably one of the questions on everybody's mind is certainly after the election, everyone is gearing up for a new political dynamic in Springfield. So So how are you, as individual legislators and as a caucus, planning to work with Governor-elect Bruce Rauner and the new administration in order to advance the priorities of the Latino community? Who would like to take a stab at responding to that? Please,
Well,
Senator
let me start off because I think that it's important that, the question that, I really believe that we're optimistic. I think that, at the end of the day, we have to, it's on. My voice carries. I think that we have to be ready for everything. I think that we're optimistic that, I think that in this administration is going to need us just as much as we need him. I think that, based on some of the conversations that he's had with some of the members, I think looking forward to working with us. I've said it real clear from the very beginning. I don't want to see any dismantling of the work that this caucus has put together in in-state tuition, the driver's license, the DREAM Act, the trust that they were working on. Those are been a very important piece of legislation that we've been able to present and pass, and I think that that's brought much more protection to our families, our immigrant families. I think that will stay in place. We're going to make sure that we continue to work on enhancing those policies that we've put in place, and even adding and making sure that is there anything else that we need to do. I know that we're going to be watching everything on a federal level when it comes to what's going to happen after yesterday's announcement. Anything that we can implement here, we're going to try to work on. I know people have asked me about, if we're covering children, why is it that Obamacare doesn't cover the undocumented? Those are questions that I think that we're going to be looking at. One time we can see what happens on the federal level, but I really believe that, the caucus has taken on some very strong issues. We're going to continue to take on these issues and make sure that we work with the new administration to ensure that what we have done, the work that we have done, it's not taken out or dismantled, but if anything, that we can enhance what we have done thus far. So we're going to depend on you to make sure that you continue to work with us in bringing us ideas and suggestions and thoughts about what we need to continue to do in Springfield, for the sake of the state, making sure that we can continue to maybe look at more things, especially when it comes to education. I know that Linda's going to talk about education because I think that's, her and Representative Soto. It's a matter of making sure that these dollars are there, that there's no cuts. I think the most important thing is the cuts that we anticipate are going to happen, but I think that we just going to have to, be ready to make sure that the cuts are justified and that the cuts do not hurt our community. Thank you. Sure. Representative?
Yes. Representative Crespo.
I appreciate you asking us how are we going to work with him. I wish he were here so we can ask him how is he going to work with us. Because I'll tell you this, the resolve of this caucus, we've worked together for quite some time, and all the good things that you've seen for the Latino community originated with this caucus, from the welcoming centers to funding for education, things that we care about. But let me tell you this. So I chair the Appropriations Committee in the House for General Services, so I'm very intimately involved with the budget. The last 4 budgets that I've been involved with, we've passed these budgets with only Democratic support. I repeat, only Democratic support. Not even one single Republican has supported the budget that funds all the things that we care about. The dynamic is going to be different now. So I'm hoping that all this rhetoric that we heard during the campaign was just that. And we understand that. We run for office. It happens all the time. I sure hope that he really means what he says. He wants to work with the caucus. We know what the needs are. We need to make sure that we have a partner who cares about those things. As the Senator had mentioned, we're going to have to make some cuts. But, the real question is going to be how many Republicans is he going to put on these budgets to support the budget for the things that really matter to us. And I repeat again for the 10th time, the budgets that we've passed, the budgets that have helped our Latino community, whether in Chicago or in the suburbs where I'm from, were budgets that were supported by Democrats only. Last year, I ran 2 budgets in the House. The Speaker asked me, can you run the governor's recommended budget, which is a budget based on the income tax continuing after 2015. We ran that budget. How many Republicans voted for it? 0. I was asked then by leadership, well, Fred, you know what? Why don't you run the doomsday budget? That's the budget that if you don't want the income tax increase, well, there's only one other option, right? You're going to have to vote for the budget without the income tax increase. So I ran the budget just to move the process along. How many votes did we get from Republicans? 0. Folks, you got to stand for something. So I'm hoping that with the new governor-elect, that dynamic does change. That would be a very positive thing to see our Republicans. And I'm not being critical, folks. I work very well with Republicans. The suburbs are mostly Republicans. It's just an observation. So I'm hoping that this dynamic changes a bit and we see more participation from the Republicans on issues that really matter to our community. That's when we need you to be very vocal, very loud, to let the new administration know these are things that really matter to us. Thank you.
Great. Senator Sandoval, I think you wanted to respond?
Yeah. Senator Sandoval from the Southwest. Any Southwest Siders in the house? Yeah, Southwest Side? Yeah, very good. So, you know, I'm not interested in whether or not I'm going to be able to work with this governor-elect. I think to me, it's irrelevant because I work for 250,000 people in my district, and those are the people that count. And I know what their needs are, and my job is to voice those needs to whoever the governor is, whether he's a Democrat or Republican. I'm going to say this. I'm going to take an opportunity now, as the new governor comes in, to see if I can convince even my colleagues that we should refocus on our agenda. And we made a stab at putting the agenda together a few years ago, but I think that we need to get back to basics. There was a loud response from the electorate on November 4th. For some reason, you know, you could only ask yourselves, they did not support the policies of the last 4 years. They wanted change, whether we like it or not. And if those same people that voted for the other statewide Democrats would have voted for our governor, things would be much different. But for some reason or other, I don't know, they didn't vote for him in those big numbers. So we got to ask ourselves, what is it that we must do different? I believe that we've spent the last 10 years rightfully working on the undocumented agenda. Much needed. In-state tuition, kid care for the undocumented, the driver's license for the undocumented, all kids. We've been working. Trust Act, transplant, Save, Dream Act, you name it, we've done it. We've done it at a time when the federal government, your Congress, your Latino congressman, has done nothing for our state. Because we've had to do the work for them in Washington. Issues that they should be taking care of. I think, Yawasta, I think, my sense is that I think the undocumented agenda needs to always be part of the agenda, but shouldn't be the agenda, because I know that most of you are not undocumented. Most of you were born here. And I sit there on the southwest side of Chicago and I wonder, all right, Latinos don't want anything different from the rest of the people of Illinois.
I don't want to make it like that. Okay.
And you know what? I want a safe neighborhood. I want a job. I want a good school. I want a good junior college in my backyard. I want to be able to send my kids to college and afford that. Those have not really been the issues that the caucus has focused on. We have in our budget in some shape or form, but it has not been the premier focus. You do not see any of these conference breakout sessions talking about, you know, crime. You don't see it talking about growing the economy, creating jobs. We don't see it about, you know, investing in overcrowded schools and building new schools and creating vocational training for the 65% of Latinos that don't finish high school. We're silent. We need to get back to basics, the bread and butter issues that we all want. We want a job, good jobs, good safe neighborhoods, safer neighborhoods, better schools, and reinvestments in our children. So I'm going to focus on trying to get back to basics on the needs of all Americans, not just the undocumented. We will continue to work on those issues, but I want Washington. You should ask Congressman Gutierrez and the rest of our congressmen up there to que se fajen bien and start doing something, because what they just did last night is unconscionable.
Senator Sandoval, to your point a little bit, I want to point out in this recent analysis that we did too, that while yes, we know that immigration is a key issue, we're at another benchmark in terms of what immigration means for these next few years, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's important to note this little analysis that the forum, my organization did, shows that when we looked at the 600,000 person growth of the Latino population in the state since 2000, 85% of that growth was driven by people who were born in the United States. So only 15% of that growth is being driven by immigration. We know that immigration is really stalling, and it's not what it was in the 90s. And if you look at the back of this, to your point, 96% of our children are citizens, and 64% of our adults are citizens. And so while immigration, I think, will always be an important issue to the Latino community, as a caucus, how do we think about moving forward on the issues of improved educational outcomes, improved home ownership, improved safety, all of the other issues like that or that are concerned to us. Let me ask, though, I've heard that, Senator Martinez, you said that the caucus is really going to do its best to make sure that all of our gains stay, but we also know that we're expecting a fiscal cliff as of January 1, which is likely going to result in $4 billion less in revenues when the tax rate falls. What sustainable fiscal policies does Illinois need to put in place, not only to to protect, but to restore and enhance resources for human services, education, healthcare, and public safety? Would anyone like to respond to that?
I will defer that over to Representative Soto or any other representative
Right here,
on that side
sure.
that haven't
Okay.
spoken yet.
Okay, so I think as soon as, before we go back, we have to start working on an agenda, a plan on what we're going to do, what we're looking for, because that's what we do. In the beginning of the year, we put an agenda together, and we go from there. We don't know what the forecast is, what's going to change and whatever, and we have a new administration, so of course, we're going to be talking that out, negotiating what we want. So again, we have to go back to working together and creating a plan. At least for us, we have to start as a Latino caucus, and we have to put our agenda together and then, work from there.
Great.
It's a new administration, and we're willing to roll up our sleeves and start working. And we don't want any cuts, believe me, especially in education, because our numbers, we have a high dropout in the state of Illinois.
Right.
We always have, I always say when we start our committee the first time, I encourage my committee to keep the budget whole, because every elected official runs on that issue, education, 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 human services, and public safety.
Sure. Representative Hernandez?
It's really serious come January 1st. That is a huge drop in funding. And so how do we begin to even think about how are we going to sustain some of our services? What are we going to do? $4 billion alone, just to give you just a window. One department, DHS, will be cut $500 million. One department. So if many of you know, much like the budget outcomes that we did a couple of years ago that we worked out, that we had to come up with some innovative ways of how we were going to be reducing the funding mechanisms that we have. Economy was going down, the funding was not going to come in. How were we going to be sustaining this type of services? So through budget outcomes, what came to be with that? We had to, we came up with, you had to prove your outcomes in order to prioritize. So I think that is kind of the direction that we're going to have to move. There's one thing that the Latino population has, and it's growth. That cannot be ignored. And that is reason for prioritizing. So as a caucus, it is very significant that we stand our ground and come across that we have to be prioritized. That is the direction that I believe that we have to move.
That's great. Representative Chapa, can I call on you with Representative?
I think that our appropriations chair wants to make an
Okay,
point.
thank you. Okay.
So, thanks for the question. I think you were asking what's going to happen when we head back in 2015. There's going to be an additional close to $2 to $3 billion hole because the income tax is scheduled to sunset. Let's take a step back. There's 118 state representatives in the House. Out of the 118, there's 71 Democrats, 41 Republicans. You cannot expect all Democrats to support a tax increase. We as Democrats don't operate that way. We're so divided. That's what makes us who we are. That's a good thing, by the way. But when the income tax increase passed 3 years ago, it passed with only Democratic support. So again, I'm going to go back to the original point I made earlier. You know, the governor-elect Rauner talks about bipartisan solutions. For us to get out of this hole when you get back in 2015, it's going to have to be a bipartisan solution. He's actually talking about raising sales taxes. He's talking about the fact that, wait a second, we need to take a step back. We need to look at the whole tax structure. He gets that. But you cannot expect just one party to take the tough votes all the time. I think key here is when we head back in 2015, for him to show us true leadership and say, you know what, this is going to be a bipartisan solution. We're going to all work together. We're going to take these tough votes together. That's going to be key. Because I can tell you, I'm only one Democrat of the 71 in the House, and I'm only one share appropriation from 5. You know, I do not expect us to do the heavy lifting all the time. We just came out of an election where the Democrats, whether you voted for the income tax increase or not, man, they hit us on that. You're a Democrat, therefore you raise taxes, which is not the case. So I think for us to be successful as we move forward, you know, I sound like a broken record here, is I really hope that he really means what he says, that we have to work together, because that's the only way we can get out of this hole. Because if not, folks, if you think this was a bad year, if you think last year was bad for Latino issues and for the Latino agenda, can you imagine what it's going to be like if we have to cut another $2 or $3 billion starting in 2015? Just think about it. So something has to happen. So just want to make sure I said that. Thank you.
So I think we clearly have some work. We've heard that there is this fiscal cliff that is hanging, and we're going to certainly count on our caucus members to continue to advocate. But I was going to ask Representative Chapa, one of the things is, yes, how do we have more resources, but what's the best way to use the resources that we have? And in education, I'm asking about Senate Bill 16, and maybe to share a little bit of the group with around that, because that's the way where the proposal is, how do we more equitably fund the resources we have without just saying we need more.
Wake up, you guys. You're all sleeping. We can see you. You think we're not tired too? We had a great meal, and we never thanked the wait staff. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to just thank them and say thank you, and I don't know if there's any in the room, but... So Senate Bill 16, if you hadn't seen it or heard, we had a 5.5-hour meeting in the Capitol on Tuesday just to hear from the pros and the cons. Now, the good thing is that the discussion is going on in the state that we don't have enough money in education. So I wanted to keep on going because at least we had them at the table. People were talking that, yes, we need to fully fund education. Fully fund education. Right now in the state of Illinois, we appropriate less than 100%. We only appropriate 89% of the dollars that goes to education. Okay, think about that. We short sheet our kids. We've done it for 5 years. If you add that years together, it's like 2.5 years that we're giving them enough money, right? It's never enough money. In the state of Illinois, we have 3 resources of how we get money into our coffers for the $32 billion or so. We have income tax, sales tax, and then we have property. That's all we have. We're a very narrow state trying to carry all the weight that's coming down on us. It doesn't work, okay? It's total failure at this time, okay? In education, we have to do something about it. We have to find a funding formula in order to fully fund education, and then we can talk talk about the formula changes. But you can't take 89% of some money from this district because it's rich and give it to another district because they don't have as much in property wealth and think we're not going to affect the rich district by taking some money, okay? It doesn't make sense. We rearranged the chairs in the room. There's the same amount of chairs. We need more chairs in the room, okay? And the discussion needs to be solid. We can't just skip this. But unfortunately, our democracy doesn't work, okay? Let me tell you. Because we come and go, and we could have started a really great program, and then we leave, it's thrown on the floor off the table. It's off the table. We need a process that's going to take this from the beginning of formula funding and get enough money and take it through the process on the way through. So it remains in perpetuity of the state, okay? And it needs to be looked at every 3 to 4 years. We can't just forget about it like we did Senate Bill 7 with Kimberly Lightford and a lot of people here with the teacher evaluations and stuff like that. Those things hadn't been looked for a long time. It's not that we don't care and we don't want to do more as legislators. It's that we come and we go. And it took me 10 years just to know everything I know about education, whether it's truancy with one of my beautiful women up here that helped me on the task force in Chicago, and the 32,000 or more kids that are 10 days or more truant in Chicago, and how those ramifications help, okay? I could sit here and talk to you for hours on education, but of the 854 school districts I think we have now, I don't know if it's in the class, in the room, but they're all different. We might have one that's a grade school, one that's a high school, one that has all of it from kindergarten to 12, and we treat them all the same. And it's just, it is a crazy quagmire of what we do in the state of Illinois. So we need to find a revenue source that we know is going to go in directly and right to education. Not the lottery. I hate hearing that because I wasn't around. I don't know what happened to it. I'm telling you. But, yeah, we had more kids. Yeah. Well, con nosotros, we have big families. We love. We're lovers, not fighters. But that gets us in trouble then, right? Because we got so many people. Don't get distracted. I want to go home now. I want to go see my husband. So mushroom walks into a bar. No, I'm joking. So, and I just gave you a little taste of how complex education is. And what the good news is that you have amazingly intelligent Latinos in the heads of all those committees in the House and the Senate. We have Senator Delgado in charge of education in the Senate. You have Lisa as the assistant appropriation for higher ed. You have Cindy and I sit on elementary and secondary ed apprope and higher ed. And then you have Fred, my vice chair for education policy. So every major inlet of education there's a Latino or a Latina at the head of that. And that's pretty powerful when you really think of it. But listen, we can't sustain our education costs right now with what we have. And you know who hurts? You know who hurts the most is our young black and brown little brothers. That's first. They're going extinct first. And let me tell you, I can take you to St. Charles and Joliet and show you what happens at $111,000 or $84,000 a year when we don't educate them. Because shame on us, when generations of America, for not funding every child the same way ever since they're born in preschool and kindergarten. Shame on us, because that's all we created. We created that. Our forefathers created that mess we have. But I'm going to tell you, if we don't find money, it's not going to get any better. Because I'd rather pay $10,000 to educate a child than $84,000 to $100,000, $11,000 to incarcerate a child. Okay? So, I love you all, and you're very important. She wants me to go to 3:30 because you know I will preach because I love education. And I was held back in 3rd grade, told I was stupid in 8. I couldn't do anything. I scored 17 on my ACT, went through Chance program at Northern, went to Wabanzi for 2 years, graduated from UIC, a 91 as an Army officer. God is good, and the reason why I'm ahead of policy is because I was those kids. And you guys have to understand, you have to give me a chance. Those kids are screaming for the money and the resources. I can tell you over here, our ROTC Air over here, these kids came and spoke at my committee. They need more money, more funding, after school programs, what have you. Why shouldn't they have the same possibility as somebody in Norridge or somebody, name a good school. What's a good school? Nequa Valley out by me. The kids all should have the same quality. Of education. He doesn't know any schools. All right. Anyway, so I think we're going to start going to questions, right?
Yes.
He hasn't spoken yet, though. Do you have a question for Cabello? Here. You're part of our caucus.
Let's hear from Representative Cabello and Representative Barrios, and then we'll go to questions. But please line up at this mic here because we are being taped live on CAN TV, and they won't hear your questions unless you're at the mic. So Representative Cabello and Representative Barrios, a comment on priorities, issues, fiscal situation. Actually, you know what? Let me give a personal thanks to Representative Barrios. We know that this is probably maybe her last conference with us. She's been an amazing leader and inspiration and really has worked very hard, having chaired this Latino Caucus in the past as well. So thank you. But let's hear from Representative Cabello and Representative Barrios, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Say hi.
What would you like to share with us?
Ask him the first question.
I just wanted to say thanks for having me. Look forward to coming back. This is my first one that I've been invited to, that I have been able to learn and take in all of the good stuff. You know, it's nice to have, I'm the first ever elected Hispanic to the Republican side of the House.
Second.
First, thank you. First elected. He was appointed but never won an election. Thank you. I know what I'm talking about. So I am the first ever elected, and I do not have a Hispanic district. So we are finally making progress on the Republican side of the aisle. We understand that you know, when it comes to an R and a D, that shouldn't matter anymore. I mean, we need to make sure that we put people first. We need to make sure that when we make decisions, when we elect people who are hopefully having the same type of a mind frame that we are. We understand that, guess what? We can't pay for everything anymore. It just is not going to, we just don't have that money. And when we say the government is paying for it, we have to remember that it's us. We're the people that have the tax dollars to give to the government. We are the ones that should be demanding to everybody here and everybody in government that we want our costs to go down. Because the only way that we're going to be able to afford houses is if we have money in our pocket. And it's our job to make sure that we try to create that environment for you and everybody else to have that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Mine is just brief because, as mentioned, this is my last conference that I will actually get to be on this panel. But it is exciting and it will be challenging all at the same time. I mean, as a group, we come together, we have our ideas, and we push forward, but it takes all your help so that we can get these things done. We have to inform the public on the different issues. We have to make sure everyone's informed about what we're doing, and it not only takes us, but it takes your help too. So even though we are going to have different leadership at the governor's mansion, different ideas rolling from the top down, you still have people who care. Everyone cares. We just all have different ideas. So it's a matter of sitting down, discussing them, and making sure we're getting the message out to the public to ensure that we are taking care of our children throughout the entire state of Illinois.
Thanks. Thank you. So let's do this. We started a little late, and we still want to try to end by about 3:30. We've got everyone lined up here for questions. Introduce yourself, and let's have 2 questions asked at the same time, and then we'll ask the panel to respond to whichever question they feel most comfortable. So we'll.
If it's a repetitive question, then you know, you can sit down if you don't, because somebody might ask the same question you might want.
Right. So we'll do the 2 questions at the same time. So introduce yourself and your question, sir.
Thank you so very much. My name is Alex Medina, and I'm here in wearing two different hats. On the one hand, I'm a DCFS employee working with the Department of Children and Family Services for 20 years now, 20 years plus. But I'm also a pastor. I'm a pastor in the area of Cicero, Berwyn. And working for DCFS and working with the Latino Advisory Committee, I have come to understand many flaws within the system, and I'll just try to be as brief as possible. One of them, some of you may be aware of the Burgos Decree, a federal decree that came as a result of unjust discriminatory practices against 2 Latino families based on language. As a result of the Burgos Decree, DCFS is mandated to keep a certain specific number of employees in place so so that our families will be served in the language in which they prefer. I'll give you a case in point.
So we've got a lot of questions. What's your question, sir?
I haven't asked the question. The question would be, DCFS has been mandated by this Burgos Decree and by the Social Service Act of 2008 that came out of your General Assembly, asking DCFS to keep this number of employees at a minimum. For 5 years at least, they have ignored these decrees laws. How does the Latino Caucus hold DCFS, the leadership in DCFS, accountable to keep the law, and most importantly, to follow up so that in fact what the law demands from DCFS.
Okay, we've got the question. Let's have the next person ask their question, and then we'll ask the panel to respond to both questions. Your name, please?
My name is Leslie Ann Dimas, and first of all, I would like to thank both sides for all the work that you do here in the state of Illinois. I recently lived in Texas for the last few months, and I have never been so happy to come home to such a great state. So thank you for everything that you do.
Welcome home.
Thank you. And with that said, I've been in banking for close to 10 years. I've been a personal banker, mortgage banking.
Your question, please.
What type of financial education do you have for the citizens of Illinois so that way they know that when they go to apply for a job, when they go to get a mortgage, when they go and try to build their 401k? Because it just seems to be like financial education is something that's missing since the crisis of 2008. What type of financial education programs are there, or does the state have, or are you guys going to start promoting to make sure that not just Latinos, but everyone has a chance to get that house, to get that job? So just what type of programs do you guys have in state, or what do you guys have planned for the future?
Okay, so who'd like to respond to the question on the Burgos consent decree and how do we hold DCFS accountable? Go ahead.
Well, thank you.
Representative Crespo?
To the first question, in terms of the Burgos decree, there are several decrees in the state, and our inability to do what we're supposed to do is pretty much based on the fact that the money's not there. But let's talk about DCFS real quickly. I mean, there's been a high turnover in DCFS from people at the top. That's a big issue. I sit on the audit commission, and I'll tell you, they have some of the worst audits that I've ever seen. So it's really hard to fund an agency when you look at audit reports and you wonder, do they know how they're using their dollars? So that's one of the things. Not taking away anything from the merits of the decree is something we have to do, but keep in mind funding is an issue. There's been a high turnover at the top, and how they run DCFS is something that we need to fix. In terms of the second question, we need money for that. All I can share with you is what we've done in my district in Hanover Park. I put a program together with two community colleges, Elgin and Harper College, and we opened a work and education center, which we were able to fund through the community colleges and through the state. And this is just to provide ESL, GED classes, financial literacy as well, and computer training. It was something I was able to do, but we did not rely only on the state. I had to reach out to the town of Hanover Park to come up with a building, to talk to ECC and Harper. Each one contributed $750,000. I got another $700,000, and the classes are already full. We have 6 classrooms during the day and at night, and it's already full. So it's a start. I agree we need to do more, but keep in mind there's some financial stresses there that we need to take care of first.
Okay, and Representative Hernandez wanted to add to that as well.
So I can let all of you know that there's a tension being placed on the Burgos decree and various other decrees that affect, in particular, Latino communities. It has been brought to our attention in the Appropriations Human Services Committee, and so we are very fortunate to have the Office of Latino Affairs, who's taken upon themselves to particularly be looking at the decrees and hold the department accountable. So we're just taking those steps this year to do that. And this is why it's important that we do have leadership in all of those committees, because that's where we're keeping our eyes watchful, that in particular this department, the Office of Latino Affairs, there we're looking to do away with that office. So see what I mean, that how it's very, very important that we have the representation in the right committees, that we are watchful of how this is being handled. So due to the hearings that that took place down in Springfield this past year, there was a lot of that was brought to our attention. So that's why I can tell you that the Office of Latino Affairs has taken upon themselves they are directly looking into it.
And those hearings were part of the Illinois Latino Family Commission. So Lila would be a person to check in with around that too, in terms of continued progress on that. Now, who'd like to take a stab at the question around what kind of financial education is available for folks? Yes, please, Representative Soto.
Okay. So what I know is our community colleges offer those programs. Sometimes you just have to kind of do your own navigation and look it up, but it's all out there. Do we have to do something at the state level? I think that those programs already exist. And again, with being in deficits, I don't know if right now would be a time where we start creating something new when it already exists.
And there are numerous organizations that provide financial education. The Resurrection Project is one. Look up Money Smart Week.
City colleges.
And the city colleges would be other resources. Okay, let's take our next two questions, please. Identify yourself and your question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sylvia Fonseca, and I'm the Vice President for the Illinois Association of Hispanic State Employees. My question is, and I want to applaud the individuals, the representatives and senators who were part of the hearings that have shown and placed Latinos in key decision-making positions within DCFS and other state agencies, because those are steps forward. I guess my concern, as our association sees it, is with the new administration, those steps forward where Latinos have been placed in policy-making decisions, how do we ensure that we don't regress and that Latinos still have a say in policy and decision-making when it comes to the budget and what programs are important?
Thank you, Sylvia. The next question, please.
Hola, I'm Rocio Garcia from Erie Elementary Charter School in Humboldt Park. I'm also a student researcher at Northeastern Illinois University. My research interests are immigration issues. So my question is directed toward Sandoval. My question is regarding your comment about safe neighborhoods. You mentioned safe neighborhoods, and a lot of the rhetoric that you used around that sounds very familiar and resonates with secure communities. And so I'd like you to elaborate on whether there's a distinction between safe neighborhoods that you're talking about and secure communities. And twofold, my next question to whomever, how do we move forward as a state now that Ronner is in place? We refer to state politics or to politics in general for for Latinos as taking 2 steps forward, 1 step backward mambo. So in the recent light of President Obama's announcement yesterday, what does that mean for the state of Illinois in terms of safe communities or secure communities?
Okay, so how do we preserve high-level employees in this next administration? Representative or Senator Martinez?
Let me start by saying, I know that we all are anticipating, and I think we just have to be very patient and wait. We have not heard yet what the new governor-elect's plans for Illinois. We don't know what the budget address is going to be like. So we really can't anticipate what is being planned until we hear. We have not heard anything. And as far as, and I think today we heard real clear from him that we are going to continue, he's going to continue to look at Latinos, from the top on down. So we have to trust that that commitment is there, that we're going to continue to see Latino directors, deputies, secretaries, undersecretaries in positions that are policymaking, and that we can continue to work on our numbers. As you know, and I say this, we are at 4% of the total state employee, which is still unacceptable. And this is under a Democratic administration. We have not been able to move our numbers up as much as we would have liked to. Yes, Governor Quinn did a great job in placing Latinos in positions, but you know what? I say that what good is of having directors when we don't have the people like a CMS that are looking at these applications as they come in through CMS, which I feel that there's been a disservice done to everyone who goes on that site, who applies, who gets the A's, and those applications were never sent to departments. So I blame CMS a lot for this. So, and that's something something that we have to do a better job at. Our numbers at 4% have to be higher. The caucus is going to continue to move Latinos, as far as trying to get resumes of people in profession, people that have bachelor's and master's and doctor's degree, because you know what? We need to help, move this state forward, and Latinos are a very, very important part of this, of what's happening in Illinois. But more important, I think the governor-elect said that, he's going to ensure that we do bring more Latinos in. So all we can do is be hopeful that commitment, we're going to hold him to that, because it's important that we have departments that reflect what this caucus looks like here, and we need to make sure that we bring directors and have directors there, and anyone that is in the policy making and decision makers needs to be Latino. So I really believe that we just have to wait until that plan is presented by the administration, which we have not heard, because even in the campaign, we didn't hear how he's going to move Illinois forward. He just talked about that we're going to shake up Springfield. Well, we're ready to be shaken up. We can shake with him, you know what I mean? But we have to make sure that we know how to shake, right? We do. But I think that we just have to wait to hear what the budget is, what is his budget plans, and then we can continue to work from that point on.
Senator Martinez, I think I even heard him say that, he would even hire some Democrats, so.
That what?
I think I even heard him say that he would hire some Democrats, so they don't even have to all be Republican.
But I think that, it's our job to really make sure that both Democrats and Republicans, we need to work together in this administration, so we need to bring forward, applications and resumes that reflect, these individuals that have a profession that really can be an asset to this new administration, and we're going to look out for that. I think we're going to, when you talk, I know there was a mention about the secure communities. I know the girl mentioned about secure communities. I know that Governor Quinn, we didn't want us with secure communities. We didn't want to enforce that here in Illinois. I think I'm going to let Marty Senator Sandoval talk about the public safety aspect that the young lady asked, because it was directed at you.
Any other response on the immigration question?
Yes, no, too much is given, much is expected. To the question of the young lady on the safe neighborhoods or secured neighborhoods, all I can say is this. We have not spent a dime on infrastructure or on police officers or law enforcement in our neighborhoods. The last president that invested in law enforcement was President Clinton, and we waited for the federal government and Congress and him to send money to our local governments to hire more police officers. We cannot keep our neighborhoods safe alone. It is not our sole responsibility, the state of Illinois. By the way, there is the city of Chicago, and you have aldermen, you have local mayors. They must also step forward to secure our neighborhoods. Our role has been, to this far, providing social service dollars for youth intervention, summer employment, and those types of programs. Quite honestly, they're all very good, but our neighborhoods lack security once again. I don't know if they're necessarily safer. There's a lot of crime going on, and so we have to get back to some basics. The best tool for keeping a neighborhood safe is keep people working. Keep people working. Parenting is important. We're losing the fight at home, and we need to look ourselves in the mirror that we cannot expect government to do everything for us. Because you know what? When 65% of your children are not finishing high school, and they're your children, they're our children. We need to ask ourselves, why aren't they? And we need to ask ourselves, why are they on the street when they're 14, 15, and 16? I'll leave on this note. I have received more visits from Latino parents over the last 8 years who've walked into my office with their 15 or 16-year-old child saying, oiga, senador, por favor, le pido que me ayude con mi hijo, mi hija. Ya no puedo con ella. I don't know what to do with them anymore. Can you please put them in a boot camp? We would have battalions. We would fight, we would win the war with ISIS if we sent every child every 15, 16-year-old whose Latino parent couldn't deal with them. we would have armies of people. Boot camp is not the answer. We need to refocus on.
I'm being told back here by the Jefe that we're at time, so I really regret. I'll ask you to come up and ask the legislators your questions. In closing, I'm going to ask our legislators to do the impossible. In one word, what is your one word of inspiration in this transition time, or what is your one priority issue for this next year? And we'll close out that way.
We want to start with Lisa, then from there.
One word of inspiration or one priority that you're really concerned with?
One word?
One word.
One word.
I'm asking legislators to do the impossible thing. I know.
One word.
Don't think about it, whatever comes to mind.
What's the question?
Break the rule, one thing you're going to fix.
I'm going to say what I came up here. If you want us to pay taxes, more taxes, then pay attention that we have equitable salaries. That I wouldn't mind. I make less than $45,000, and I've dedicated my whole life to the entire Latino community, and yet I can't retire, and I wouldn't mind to pay 4% extra. The media makes a mockery out of. He wants to raise the taxes. Raise the damn taxes, but pay us fair salaries. We can't pay all the utilities and the mortgage.
It sounds like Martha needs a promotion.
No, it's not that Martha needs a promotion. It's our community. It's single moms. It's mucha gente que necesitamos. Not Martha. Martha can make it.
You're symbolic
but
of
what
that,
I'm
Martha.
saying, I don't mind paying more taxes. As long as we have equitable salaries, and as long as we would like to see you, and we've told you this year after year, increase the number in states' employment because we're lagging behind.
So we're hearing the economic pain.
And we're getting squeezed between the state and the city, and it's ridiculous.
Thank you, dear. Thank you for sharing that.
I want to thank you. So I found my one word. I found my one word. Thank you, because you gave me the thought. And the one word is pressure.
Pressure. We're going to keep the pressure on. Representative Cabello?
Yes.
Your word?
Or?
Yeah. What is it?
I didn't.
Your word.
For what?
I asked.
You didn't hear.
Boy, what's your word of inspiration, or what's your priority for this next year?
Oh, my God.
Well, I actually kind of want to
One
answer
word.
the other questions. So, first of all, if we look at Mr. Rauner, Governor-elect Rauner, he's already decided to look at us because he has a Latina lieutenant governor, so that's a good thing. Number two, the way we're going to be able to put pressure, which is the wrong word to use, but the way we'll be able to have more influence is to grow our numbers up here. And
Grow the net membership.
my last
Representative
word
Soto.
is, what we should use for one word is Latinos.
Latinos, yes.
Thank you. I have to say, too, J-O-B, okay? And minimum wage up to $15, because we have a new administration, and if we can't get it up to $15, we might not see it for a long time. So we need to support a $15 minimum increase, even if, it's a step to 15.
Yeah, Senator Sandoval.
We need to do it, and talk to your legislators, make sure they support a $15 minimum wage increase. Thank you. I can't hear you.
Yes, Senator Sandoval, please.
I think the minimum wage should be $30 an hour.
Talk to the mayor.
Right. I have two, because I have Chicago and the suburbs. It's economy, less taxes.
All right, thank you. Senator Martinez?
You didn't accept.
I'm always a very positive person, so I want to be optimistic.
Optimistic, great.
I think optimistic is the word to just keep, I think we have to keep our, we have to be ready, we have to be welcoming, we have to, roll up our sleeves, and we got to work. So I'm very optimistic that that's going to happen, as we move for the future.
Thank you. Representative Barrios?
My one word would be hope.
Hope. Great word.
Because we all
Representative
need to work
Crespo, last
towards
word.
that.
The money man, money.
Well, you guys used all the words that are out there, so I'll just say this. Siempre pa'lante, para atrás, ni para coger impulso.
All right, thank you all very much. Let's give them a big hand of applause, everybody. Thank you.